We can start? Okay. Welcome everybody in this room. Welcome everybody online watching the stream. A few minutes late because of some technical problems. We obviously were not able to dig that, but I hope we are able to dig into the DataDigger. I will give a small presentation, an introductory presentation on the DataDigger. Perhaps you know it, perhaps not. Let me first introduce myself. My name is Tingen. I work for Axians in the Netherlands, in Groningen. I've been working with Progress since 1993. I started in version 6.2 on Novell Network and made my way to 11.7 at the moment. Now what we see here is a picture of Gus Björklund. I think Mike Wegner posted it somewhere on PSDN. And the point that Gus wanted to make with his shirt was how incredibly smart and intuitive the Progress language is. If you look at this program, I don't even know what language this is, but the other side of his shirt would show this, and it would be the same program. It was just as simple for each customer. And it perfectly shows how elegant our language is, and sometimes we tend to forget that. Now, we often write these kind of programs, and that's also the pitfall of Progress. Because it is so elegant, it is so easy to write small programs like this one, just as simple for each display customer. We've all written these kind of programs just to know what kind of data is in my database. And little programs like this, probably as well, to see what kind of tables are in my meta schema, what kind of files do I have, what kind of tables, what kind of fields live inside those tables. And probably these kind of programs as well. Just do a little small update on your database, and well, it doesn't seem very much wrong with programs like this. I don't know if you can spot the problems on this program. Syntactically, it's perfectly fine. If you compile this, it will run. And if you run this on a sports database, it will be finished in no time. But you have a danger. If you run this on a large production database, then you might end up with something like this. And that's not good. So what are we going to do about that? The problem is, you didn't save the program, so you lost the program. If you go back here and you terminate your Progress session, your program is gone. If you're lucky, you can find it in your temp folder, but it probably is gone. Luckily, this is a PowerPoint presentation, so I'll save you that. And here's the program again. Now, the problem with this program are threefold. The first problem is, if it even succeeds, how many records did we update? We don't have an idea. The second problem might be, what the heck? I didn't even mean to update this. Was I really in production? And the third, obviously, how can I roll this back before anyone finds out? Now, these kind of questions were exactly the questions I asked myself I was facing in 2008. And you're out of luck, by the way. These questions came up in 2008, and I thought with myself, I'm a programmer. We are programmers. We ended in this situation because in 2008 we started with a new framework, DWP, and a programmer can handle situations because a programmer is someone who solves problems. And if you are a programmer and you have a problem yourself, then you should be able to solve your own problems, don't you? As I said, 2008 we started with DWP, and the framework was kind of unknown to us, so we ended up writing all kinds of little programs. But 2008, that's a long time ago. You remember 2008? Adele was still 19, she's in her 30s now, I guess. The Large Hadron Collider was introduced, and we all were afraid it would introduce a large black hole. Obama was selected, and the Lehman Brothers had some small financial problems. You could buy an iPhone for $199. At the meantime, a new phone operating system was introduced, version 1.0. If I recall, its name was something like Android. And finally, Spain won the soccer World Championship. Now this was 2008. And we were looking for a tool that could help us to dig into DWP and find a repository. DWP, if you don't know, that is a repository-based framework. And it hides all its implementation and definitions inside a database, and we wanted just to know what exactly is going on. If we change a little thing on a screen, how does it represent inside the database? So we started writing small programs like I shown before, little for eaches and little dumps, and we wrote a kind of custom procedure, a custom browse procedure just to browse the database, but it all seemed a lot of work. So I started searching on the internet, and I found this little tool called DataHack. It was written by Richard Tardivon, if I pronounce that well. I guess he was from France. I don't know if he's still active in the prose community. But his tool was already a few years old. I believe it dates back to 2003 or 2005. And he wrote this for his work with dynamics. And he probably faced the same questions as well. This tool was about 2,500 lines of code. It was a nice program. It was elegant. And we adopted this program, and soon we found out that we wanted more. We wanted it to be resizable. We wanted some extra filtering. We wanted a lot of things extra. So at one point I thought, just clone this program and name it my own. Now, over 20 versions later, the tool looks a bit similar to what it originally was. You can see all the similarities with the original tool, but the code base has been a bit increased, and a lot of functionality has been added since then. Okay, let's dig into this one, and let's just dissect this a little bit. You see the main window. If you already work with DataDigger, you probably are familiar with this, but since this is an introductionary, at the left upper right corner, you will see all the tables in all the currently connected database. That is, if you start up database, if you start DataDigger, and in the PF file you connect to all the databases, you will see them all here. You can filter around here, and you can see all the tables there. The upper right corner shows you all the fields in the currently selected table. In this case, I have, not very clear to see here, but I have customers selected, and here I have all the fields in the customer table. You can select between fields and indexes. And below is the data from, obviously, your customer table. Now, what better to show than a live demo? What could possibly go wrong? Can we see this? Yeah, we can see this. Here is my DataDigger, and I have to turn on my mouse highlighter so you can see my mouse, if it works. It doesn't. Now it does. So you can see my mouse more clear. We have a list. I started this with a few databases, and as you can see, I have more than one database. I have a Sports 2000 and a plain Sports 11. The sorting in this table seems a little bit weird. There is no obvious order, except for that it's now sorted on this rightmost column. You can just change it as you like. You can sort it ascending, descending, and if you have no sorting specified, then it will sort on most recently used. You can select the database, so you only see the tables from that specific database. For now, I'm going to leave it there. In this table filter, you can obviously filter. If you type something, it does an implicit matches. It will add an asterisk at the front and at the back, so you will see all the tables that have ER somewhere inside. You can make it explicit by adding your asterisk yourself, so it now will only show tables that end with ER. If you like, you can add a comma-separated list of table, like this. So you can only see the item and the orders, and as you can see, it's in all connected databases. There are better ways to do things like this. If you're working on a ticket and you work explicitly with a handful of tables, there is a better way to do that. I will come to that later. To create a filter, we have an advanced way of filtering, because sometimes you just want to know in what tables does my specific field end up. So, for instance, we have a custom, so we want to know what tables have the custom field. Now, the table browse shows you only those tables that have a customer number. It's highlighted in yellow, so it's easy to find. There's my yellow. You can combine this, so if you want to have all the fields that have a custom, you can do this, but you can also use wildcards here. So all the fields that have something with a number and something with a date. So now we have here birth date and employee name, all marked in yellow. And expand that, we don't want to see fields that have sales rep. Even there you can use wildcards. So now you saw some tables disappear here. Those obviously had a sales rep field. Other tips here is that you can show the schema table. I'll just clear this one out. So we only show the meta schema fields, which makes it handy to find out what the fields in your database are if you want to dig into that. Okay, let's reset this. As I said, if you're working on a ticket, often you want just a handful of tables to appear. What you can do is to add them to your set of favorites. By default, you have a set that's called My Favorites, and you can add some tables. You can add a group of your own, of course. So if you're working on something with an order ticket, you just name it order ticket, and you throw in all the fields, all the tables that have something to do with orders. It might be order, order line, and item, for instance. Now, all the connected databases, you have the tables here. Let's make it a little bit clearer here, so only the sports database. You can have multiple groups if you like. Perhaps if there's something with sales, you could use a sales rep, ref call, perhaps, and perhaps even order, because a table can be in multiple sets of favorites. If you go back to the table, you can see that some of the tables are in blue. That's because they are in your current set of favorites. You can easily switch between favorites right here. You can change the group, so if you want order tickets is not a good name, you can name it orders. And if you want to get rid of it, you can just throw it away if you like. You can see the star marked here for tables that are in your current set. This one is black. For other tables, it's not black, it's white. You can see the difference. You can toggle this one to add it to your set of favorites, just if you need an extra table there. Okay, so far for the table browse. The field browse works a bit similar. You have filtering here, so you can use filters. Here is the filtering, it works with an implicit matches. We have a lot of columns here. You cannot see them all. I will make it a little bit wider, and you will see that there are a lot of columns here. All the properties that belong to a field can be shown here. If you don't want them, just switch them off. Let's go back to the tables and to the orders. Yeah. If I have the customer table, if I open it up, I can see all the data that belongs to this one. If some of the fields have a wrong format, you can simply change the format here and make it a little bit wider. This is just for your session. DataDigger will remember that. So for instance, if it should be 40, then you can add 40, open up the browse again, and then the format will be longer. There's no, you can even make it smaller if you like, to make it clear what it does. Now the country is 4, so you can see all the countries are now abbreviated. It's marked red to indicate that you changed it. It says the original format is X20, just make it blank and it goes back to its normal state again. So if we look at the customers here, let's assume that we want to update the customer table. If you all remember the small program I had at the beginning, I wanted to have all the customers from the USA, so I can just enter that there, that had a credit limit below 10,000. I'll just switch to the credit limit here. I can use an operator here, smaller than 10,000. And if I recall correctly, I didn't want to see anyone that belonged to Bob Brown. Those are the same. There's an easy way to filter here. As you can see, the fields are far to the right sometimes. If you want to look up a field, you just find it here. So suppose if I wanted to see the terms field, just double click, the browse will switch to the right. I'll do that again. And there you have, it flashes. Okay, we have all these fields. Now we want to update them. Just a matter of selecting all those records and press update. A new screen opens. Just resize it a bit. And what you may notice is that a lot of the fields are blank. That's because the value for that field is different for more than one customer. These last two fields means that all 7 records have the same value. All the other ones are different. So we want to set the credit limit to 10,000. As you can see, the toggle box is there automatically selected. Should I want to set a sales rep, I can browse through the existing values using page down, and I can see all the values that are present in my set of data. Okay, I'm not going to change that. I'll press OK. Uh-oh, there I have an error. That's because fine thing in the progress database is the old validation expressions. Now if you have a sports database, it has some validation expressions, and I simply don't have the trigger code here. So it gives me an error. I can work around that. I set the credit limit to 10,000 and I switch off the write triggers from the database and save it again. If I switch to the right, you can see that all customers have been set to a credit limit of 10,000. Okay. Let's go back to my presentation. So here was the little program again. We did this with the DataDigger. But we also had another problem, because we said by accident we found out that we were in the production environment. So I just updated that. And what if I want to roll it back? There's an easy solution for that, because the DataDigger will save a before image file of your record in the backup folder. You can access or define that folder within your settings. And when you open that up, you can see that it has 7 files for 7 records. If we open up one of these files, we will see that this is inside the file, and it will show you the old value, and in this case it's a credit limit of 6,000 for one of my customers. I can simply select all 7 files drag them onto the DataDigger, and just release them. Just drop them onto the DataDigger. A new window will pop up showing all the values from the XML files. And you can view what you're about to import. You can press finish, and then your old values are back again. Here are the old values again.
Will it generate a backup of the previous version as well?
I'm not quite sure. Could be. I don't know. But then you end up with a lot of XML files, and if you could be, it should be. And how about the last one? Suppose that we want to prevent ourselves from updating records in the production environment. So we want our computer to say no. There is an option to work with a read-only version of the DataDigger. Normally you just start DataDigger with a run DataDigger.p, but there is a second version. It's called DataReader.p, and what it does, it opens up the DataDigger in read-only mode. You can see that in the title, and it will open up with a window saying that you are working in a read-only version. This might be very handy to have in production if you don't want to accidentally change a lot of data. It might also be an option, depending on your user base, to give a read-only version of the DataDigger to some of your power users. So, DataDigger has a lot of extra tools. I will explain a lot of these tools in my other session, the DataDigger for experts. Some of the extra features are that it can generate code, it can dump data definitions for you, it can clone your current database, it has a resizable data dictionary thanks to Sébastien Lecroix. It has, it can generate code, it can generate code twice, I can see. It has a query tester made by Marius Vieren. It has predefined connections, so you can have multiple connections defined and select on the fly. It has a query history, and it also has developer hooks, so you can just modify the behavior of DataDigger. Okay. If you want more, just head over to datadigger.wordpress.com. DataDigger is fully free. It's open source. You can use it in every way you like it. There is a lot of information on the blog. It points you to GitHub, where it can also be found. For experts, there is a wiki on the GitHub with a lot of information, but I will cover that in my other session. So, any questions? Wim?
Plans for app server implementation?
No. No, I've been thinking about that, but it seemed like a lot of work, and client server is all over the place in DataDigger, so that would mean almost a total rewrite.
Okay.
Yes?
If I do this configuration and select my favorites, maybe some fields or tables, where does it start? Is there a file that I can give to my colleague?
Yes, it will save all its settings inside an ini file, and in my session Digging for Experts, I will explain the behavior of the ini file. There is a layering of ini files. It's a generic layer, a generic ini file, and a personal ini file. And you can use that to use defaults for all users, and for users to have their own settings that are different than the generic ones. Other questions?
When is your next session?
The next session is tomorrow at 12 o'clock, I guess, if I'm correct. If you have no questions, then I'd like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Happy digging.